right, we are looking at verse 27 to verse 39. Of course, this is a continuation of what Luke is trying to record and trying to inform his readers. We saw how the previous section was a very simple section of Jesus demonstrating, Luke is demonstrating Jesus' power over nature. Even the winds and the waves obey him. And I think a parallel lesson, of course, is for the disciples to realize how little they know him. And if they want to follow him, this is what they have to begin to learn, that Jesus has power over the winds and the wave and the nature obey him. And then they have to put their faith in him, who is able to do all this. Therefore, they are to know that he's omniscient, he's omnipresent, he's omnipotent, he can do all things. Then in this section, then Luke continues to show to us that Jesus is the supreme one with power over the spiritual realm, over the realm of darkness. And I think here, Luke is making this as clear as it is possible. He would show how Jesus is really the one who has full authority. The demons have to obey him. The demons have to ask him for permission. The demons know who he is. And so here is Luke's main purpose for readers to really understand. But at the same time here, I think Luke has some other parallel lessons also to demonstrate the destructiveness of the forces of darkness, of the forces of evil. And then also alongside that, he's also to demonstrate how Jesus has come to take away, the darkness and its power to destroy, and then to put in place something for God's people. I think here, there's a phrase that we all know, right? That Satan comes to kill, to steal, and to destroy. We say that, but we don't realize how dangerous he is. So that some people not realizing, some people go and dabble with him, and then they get caught. Satan comes to steal, to kill, and to destroy. But God has come in the person of Jesus Christ to give us abundant life, which is the opposite of what Satan wants to do. And I think Luke produces this contrast here in such a way that is so dramatic that it cannot be missed. And then Luke also wants to show to us, how while this contrast is so clear and so stark, it is just common sense for some people to decide. But yet, because of sin and the blindness that sin causes in some people's eyes, some people just do not, make the right decision. And I think before we go into the text, to kind of highlight those things that Luke wants to share with us, right? I want to make two introductory points that I think is very important. There are two, mistaken attitude that people take, even today, towards Satan and towards the forces of evil with demons and all that. One mistake that people make is people dismiss it as, this is not something that we all modern, scientific, minded people, educated people, should take so seriously, This is maybe what Luke writes is applicable only during their age. Why? Because the people then were not so sophisticated. They did not have the diagnostic manual, for human behavior. And then whatever they cannot understand, whatever they cannot explain, they just say, this one is the work of demon. And so today we are more sophisticated, we can tell the mental illnesses, this is by mental illness, and there are ways of treating them. And so we dismiss the work of darkness. We dismiss Satan's destructive work in our midst today, thinking that this is something, that, we shouldn't be too worried about. We take him too lightly. That's one mistake. The second mistake that people make towards, demonic activity is we give Satan too much credit. Like as if, he's equal to God. And of course, we realize that he's not. He wants to do everything he can to disrupt God's work, God's plans, but he's definitely not equal to God, as you will see in this passage. And so then we need to see Satan and his demonic activity in the right perspective against what God is doing. That's the first thing. The second thing I think is very important for us today as believers, as readers of Luke's Gospel to recognize is this. Demonic activity in the Old Testament has always been there. Because the demonic activity, Satan is a fallen angel. And all his demons are also fallen angels. And so even in the Old Testament already, I'm sure their activity is already very rampant, working to, kind of bring people against the will of God. But in the Old Testament, you don't have any record of any personal experience of demonic activity. And I think what this suggests to us, for us to think about, is this. Demons always like to work in secrecy. They don't expose themselves. They don't allow people to know them, so that their activity is done, in such a way that people are deceived, people are fooled. But their whole main purpose is to disrupt, or to kind of, derail, the plans of God. And so while demon and their activities has always been very active in Old Testament, but we don't see any record of any personal manifestation. It's not recorded in Old Testament for us. And therefore, then when you see in the New Testament, in the life and the ministry of Jesus, there seems to be an explosion. And the reason is not because demons now, have been caught, or the demons now, and so it's different from the Old Testament. The activity is different. I think here what I want to just kind of emphasize is this. The demons were exposed in the life and the time of Jesus because Jesus is the Son of God. He is the light. And because the light is shining, the forces of darkness is just simply exposed. And because Jesus was present and the demons recognized him, and therefore they were exposed, by the very fact that Jesus has come, as different from the Old Testament. And then you find that in the New Testament that this explosion of demonic activity, right, is not the writer's ways of telling us, you must be more aware now. It is by the simple fact that Jesus was present, that the forces of darkness and the forces of evil were just simply, could not help themselves. They were just simply exposed for who they were. Now I'm laying this theological understanding for us to struggle with one truth, okay? And the truth is this, that now after Jesus has gone back to heaven, the demons are equally active here in this world. But perhaps their activity is not like the time when Jesus was present. Their activity and their strategy now is a little bit more like how they operated in the Old Testament. They are operating in secrecy, but their activity is just as destructive. But because the Lord is not here, their activities are not exposed. And so while sometimes we know, right, that we do not war against flesh and blood. We war against principalities and powers of darkness. And so the powers of darkness are equally active today. And they are active in ways that we are not clever enough to see. Sometimes we think that we are Christians, so we should be able to tell, the activities of the demonic realm. But actually we are not. There are many ways in which they work to bring destruction to people's lives. That is why you see there are many people who jump off, from the high flat. We don't quickly, equate that with the destructive powers of darkness, but it is. Because God has plans for every person's life, that every person should be saved, that every person should be transformed into the likeness of Christ and to be prepared for heaven. But some of these lives are taken away, are short-circuited. And those are the activities of the demonic forces. And sometimes, Christians, those, especially those who are involved in deliverance, I think they are just but scratching the surface of the demonic activity. And so there's a much deeper, level that we need to be prayerful to God about, and then claim the presence of Christ. So that in the presence of Christ, these demonic activities and powers can really be exposed. And it is not we who expose them. We have no powers to expose them. It is Christ and His presence, His living presence, that would expose them. I thought I want to just bring that, reality, which Luke also in this passage is trying to show to us now. And so there are 4 things that I think we want to see out of this passage. But of course, what is recorded now, as you read the passage, is quite simple. Jesus and the disciples reached the shore where they were going to, and we know that's the place called Gerasenes. And the minute they came off the boat, they went on the land. We are told that a man then saw Jesus. And this man, Luke tells us, is demon possessed. And then he saw Jesus. He recognized who Jesus was immediately. Not him, but the demons was in him. And he said, "You are the Son of the Most High God. What do we have to do with you? Have you come to torment us?" And then Luke also then tells us that this man, because he was demon possessed, he's completely naked. He doesn't put on any clothes. And then he doesn't live like the normal people do. He doesn't live in a home. He lives among the tomb. And then we are told that then in this account, what Jesus did was, let me find the passage.
Luke 19, no.
From 27 onward. Okay, we are told, then when he saw Jesus, he cried out. Then he fell at Jesus' feet, shouting at the top of his voice. He fell at Jesus' feet, shouting at the top of his voice, "What do you want with me, Jesus, Son of God Most High? I beg you, don't torture me." And then because Jesus was commanding, my version said evil spirit, some other version said impure spirit, to come out of the man. Because many times the spirit has seized him, and though he was chained in hand and feet and kept under guard by people around him, he broke those chains, and then he was driven by those demons into solitary places where there are no people, possibly to torment him and torture him some more. And then Jesus asked him, "What is your name?" And of course, instead of the man answering him, the demons who were within the man answered Jesus, "We are legion," meaning there are many demons. Legion means it is a word that is used to describe a legion of soldiers, Roman soldiers. And actually the exact number of a legion of Roman soldiers is anything from 2,000 to 6,000. They are called a legion. And later we know that there were so many demons really, because why? There was a herd of pigs, right? We are told how many in number? 2,000. And the demons went into those pigs. And so at least if one demon go into one pig, because the whole herd of pigs went off the cliff, right, by the demons, right? And so if one demon entered one pig, then you have at least 2,000 demons already. And so possibly more, because you could have 2 demons entering into one pig, right? And so then they begged him repeatedly not to order them to go into the abyss. The abyss, of course, is the Jewish understanding of the lake of fire, where the demons will be kept in suffering, in punishment for all eternity. And so the demons are afraid of ending up there, because that is not supposed to happen yet, right? And so they begged Jesus not to send them there yet. And then a large herd of pigs was feeding there on the hillside, and the demons begged Jesus again to let them go into the pigs. And Jesus gave them permission. And then when the demons came out of the man, they went into the pigs, and the whole herd rushed the steep bank into the lake and were all drowned. And then those tending the pigs saw what had happened. They ran off and reported this in a town, to the owners probably, and the people all went out to see what had happened. When they came to Jesus, they found a man from whom the demons had gone out, sitting at Jesus' feet, dressed and in his right mind, and they were frightened. And those who had seen it told the people how the demon-possessed man had been cured, and so they knew exactly what took place. Then all the people of the region of Gerasenes asked Jesus to leave them, because they were overcome with fear. And so Jesus got in a boat and then left. And then the man, as he saw Jesus leaving, he begged Jesus for permission to go with him. But Jesus told him instead, "Return to your home and tell them how much God has done for you." And so the man went away and then told all in his home, in his town, how Jesus and what Jesus had done for him. And so there are 4 things that I want to just highlight here. First, we see here the destructive power of the forces of darkness. Here was a man who we see how after he was delivered, how he was such a normal person. And so you can imagine that when he was born, his parents had all kinds of hope in him, and then he grew up, a normal person. But at some point in his life, he allowed the demons to enter into him. And I think a slight hint here, because there's a version that says he has an unclean spirit. And so an unclean spirit is probably a impure spirit. And then we have another hint is this man goes about when he was possessed by this demon, he goes about naked. And so this opening that Satan had, in coming into his life, probably had to do with some sexual lust. that this man probably at some point in his life was careless, and therefore maybe he think that with the demon in his body, he can do more or he can do whatever, and so he had an opening by which the demons or the forces of darkness that came into his life. But unfortunately, that was not the only thing. If he had allowed the demon to come into his life with some weird warped idea that if the demon comes, then maybe he can do something that as a man he cannot do, that actually created an opening, and whatever he thought would benefit into his life actually did not end up benefiting him. And so the destructive powers of darkness is deceptive, making you a promise to give you some kind of power that you do not have if you do not have them. And therefore you open your life, and they come in, and the end result is of course destructive. Instead of letting you enjoy more power, they will control you to the point that you lose all sense of dignity. Not only do you not receive what you ask for, as a result, but in fact your life is reduced to something that you cannot even imagine would happen to you. You lose all sense of dignity. You just go about life naked, and then you are not normal anymore. You cannot live in a home like everybody else does. You even have to leave, probably be ostracized from your own family. And worse than that, what happens? You don't live among people. Instead, you go and live in the tombs. And so that is the end result of the forces of darkness. You become so close, not to life, not to people, but you become drawn closer and closer even to death. You live among the tombs where the dead are living. And that is the way of Satan in seeking to destroy us. We all know this, right? That the enemy comes to steal, to kill, and to destroy. We know that as a phrase, but this is a real life incident or a real life demonstration of what Satan seeks to do. And this man also has lost his own, personhood, because the demons has come in to control him completely. When Jesus asked, "Who are you?" Jesus is asking the man, "What's your name? Who are you? What family do you come from?" But he cannot even answer Jesus on his own. The Satan, the forces of the demons in him has taken over his speech, has taken over his whole life, and answers on his behalf. So that then Satan said, or the demon said, "We are the legion." And then the end that these forces of darkness want to make in his life is what? Wants to destroy him completely. And we see that when the demons came out of the man and then went into the pigs. And what did the demons do? The demons then drove the pigs off the cliff and killed the whole herd of pigs, which is evidence of what the demons would have wanted to do in the man's life actually. But for some reason, by the mercy of God, they were not permitted to do that. But that is what Satan seeks to do, to destroy the person that he comes in and inhabits, and comes in such a way that the person doesn't know, and then in the course of time takes control over his life, destroy his personhood, takes complete control over him in order that they may destroy him. And here Luke shows to us really the absolute destructive force of what Satan wants to do in people's lives. And so that's one part that Luke wants to show to us. But we need not be afraid. Why? Because we know one who is more powerful than Satan. The one who lives in us is more powerful than the one who is outside in the world. And therefore here Luke also shows to us a second picture, who is Christ, who is in full authority. So that the moment he came on shore, the demons recognized who he is. And they had to come and fall at his feet and then beg him and declaring, "We know who you are. You are the Son of the God Most High. And we have nothing to do with you. We are so far from you. You are at the other end while we are here. And what have you come to do? Have you come to torment us?" And then they had to beg him not to cast them into the abyss, which is actually a place that God has designated at the end of times for Satan and all his forces, all his demons. And so the demons here at this point also, probably had this sense that they still have some free time to roam in this world, to do the things that, is against God. It is not yet time for them to end up, in the place where God will put them. And therefore, they begged Jesus not to send them there yet. And then seeing the pigs, of course, again, they had to beg Jesus. And so here it is very clear what Luke is showing to us, that Jesus has absolute authority and control over them. When he speaks the word, they have to obey him. And without his word, they cannot even do anything. They see the pig, they want to go into the pig, but they cannot even just leave the man and go into the pig. They had to ask Jesus for permission. And only upon his word, then they were able to do that. And maybe a question that we have in our mind is, why did Jesus allow the demons to go into the pigs, right? I think here we can imagine a few. One is, of course, Jesus wants the demons to come out of the man. And coming out of the man, then where to go? And so to go into the pigs then is a way of demonstrating that here indeed this man has been delivered of the demons that were in him. And therefore Jesus wanted to make it a clear demonstration of his power over these demons. And then as they go into the pigs, then again when the pigs jump over the cliff, it is also to show that the demons is seeking the destruction of the people that they inhabit. And then to go into the pigs also is also a demonstration of that is where they belong. Because to the Jews who live in the area, the pigs are unclean animals. And to show that the demons really belong, in the pigs. Of course, when we think of pigs today, we think as Chinese, we think of pig as the source of food, right? And so how can Jesus do this? But at that time, it is not. The Gentiles were rearing the pigs probably for food, but the Jews see the pig, as unclean. And so it's a demonstration of, the place where the demons belong. And so at least that gives us an understanding of the different contexts of pigs from us here today. And so here again, we see a demonstration of Jesus' power to deliver this man and to cast out the demons who are completely subject to his every word and every command and every order. And therefore, we really need not be afraid of the forces of evil. And then what we see here also is, the deliverance that this man experienced. At the beginning in this account, we see the destructive power, the demons wanted to lay upon him in his life. But then when Jesus has completed the work in restoring him, what do we know of this person? Luke records for us, he was sitting at the feet of Jesus. When the townspeople came, they saw him sitting at the feet of Jesus. And that is a position of what? That's a position of discipleship, a position of learning, a position where now he's open to hear everything that Jesus has said to him. When previously, he was one who was going to destroy his own life. But here now, he's in a place where he wants to learn from Jesus. And then we're told that he's fully clothed. When before he was naked and running around, completely lost all sense of dignity of a person created in God's image. Now he's fully dressed, as a person should be. And then we find that he's also, dressed and in his right mind. And so he's restored already, in the image that God has created this man to be. And then after, Jesus had dealt with him, he even want to what? He even want to go with Jesus to serve him. But Jesus said there is a more urgent thing for you to do. And then Jesus sent this man back to be the first missionary, so to speak, in his town. Because what did he do? Now he was able to go back and tell the people in his town everything that God has done for him. And so that's the third thing that Luke wants us to see now. The forces of evil is powerful, but Jesus is more powerful. And when Jesus has completed his work, then a person is restored with the image of God that he was meant to have. And then he's able to serve God and be God's missionary, carrying the gospel to those who do not know. And then finally, I think Luke also shows us the fourth factor in this account, which is also important for us to see. And that is, we can see for ourselves, right? On the one hand, what does evil do? Evil seeks to destroy us. Amen. But on the other hand, Jesus has come to do what? He's come to give us life and life more abundant. And so the choice is so clear. I mean, any person with any bit of common sense would choose life. Why choose to become, one where your life is completely destroyed? And so any person with any tinge of common sense would choose life with Christ, right? But what we see here is the blindness that comes because of the sin within our heart. It is possible that when a choice is so clear, there are people who will decide not to receive life. And therefore the people from the town, when they came forth and saw for themselves the difference, what did they do? Did they come and say, Jesus, we beg you, we want to have life from you, and reject, the work of Satan? No. They rejected Jesus Christ. They chased him away from the town, to the extent that Jesus, then Luke tells us, he went on the boat and then he left. And that statement, right, he went on the boat and left them, is such a tragic statement, isn't it? And in the account in Jesus' ministry in Galilee, in the whole area for the next remaining 3 years that he ministered here, there is no account that he ever came back to Gerasenes. And that is such a sad commentary. But here again is what we know. We need to know, that when God invites us to make a decision, either for Him or for the world, then the decision that we must make must be a wise decision that we make for life, not for death. We make a decision for light, not for darkness. We make a decision to serve God, not to be a servant controlled completely by Satan and the forces of evil. And therefore we need to make a decision like that. And I want to just close with this warning again now. Satan is equally active in the world today, but he's active in the world in the way that he was active in the Old Testament. In the Old Testament, the fallen angels and his demons also were equally active, but they were not exposed. Why? Because Jesus had not come. When Jesus came, all these demonic activities suddenly started to show. Why? Because the light was present, and for darkness was exposed. The Son of God Most High was there, and so for the demons who were working against him, had to surrender themselves in his presence. But the demonic activity is just as active as present today, but they probably operate in the same way that they did in the Old Testament. And we need to be aware, because the forces of evil work in ways that we are not, as people, we're not clever enough to identify. Sometimes we see a person, right, with some demonic, we can see that that's obvious. And so we can use the name of Jesus Christ to help them, deliver them. But Satan works in ways that are more subtle, more clever than Christians today can see. And only Jesus Christ, can come and defeat them. And therefore we need to be totally dependent on the living presence of Jesus Christ in our lives, for us to be wise to the wiles of the enemy. And don't go away, fooled, that we think we know everything that Satan is doing now. And therefore we really need to be like the disciples at this point. Jesus wants them to see that he has full authority over the spiritual realm. And then the disciples also therefore need to know, that as they come to him, he offers to them, abundant life, away from the darkness, of the demonic forces now. Amen. Amen.